tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support. Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to the UCR Top 10 of 2021 replay, top 10 episodes of the year thing that we're doing for the first time ever. And we've finally reached it. Number one. So welcome to your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. Thank you so damn much for being here, you guys, on this New Year's Eve day. Happy New Year's to everybody. Want to say hello to everyone in the chat. Simone, Happy New Year. The Sparky Lady, Happy New Year. Let's see here. Peter Becker. This talk was a delight, good choice, and happy 2022, everybody. Happy 2022 to you. Good sir. Connor Wrigley, hey, back at you, and Happy New Year. Let's see here. Happy New Year, everyone. So he says as well. Swinky McLeod, last Marty of the year. Not technically speaking. We still got one more Marty at the end of the show. So we get one more Marty before 2022. Happy New Year, Marty. Happy New Year's Eve, y'all, from Arlene Adkinzel. Happy New Year's Eve, my lady. NP coming in strong as always. Happy New Year, Lou. Happy New Year, my good sir. Swinky McLeod with the Happy New Year. Hello, Sparky Lady with a $20 super chat donation. Happy New Year. What y'all got planned for 2022? A little bit more of this and a little bit more of that, I think. We'll see. We do have some plans for 2022. One of them involves a live show. One of them involves some new ideas for the big phone home. One of them involves some new guests. Yeah, so those are some of the things I'm working on right now. Right now, I'm working on filling all of January so I can work on what's going on with this live show and some other stuff. But yeah, we're super stoked. It's going to be a cool year. I've also got to legitimize the business. I'm going to have to actually get a business license and do business things for this channel because it's growing at an insane rate. And so I want to be ready for when that happens. And so, yeah, we'll be doing that as well. Jason Brown says, evening all. Don D, popping bottles, I think, or clinking some beers. Thank you. Happy New Year. Now that I become death, Betty White. She passed away today. Rest in peace. Yeah, that one sucks. That one cuts to the bone. Betty White. Oof. I grew up with her on Golden Girls, but Betty White essentially worked from 1930 to 2021. Up until she died. She was doing work this year. She was the unofficial mayor of Hollywood for a time. And that's an actual title. She was an actual trailblazer. One of the first women to actually be able to produce and direct things in Hollywood. She's an icon. She will be greatly, greatly missed. Insanely funny until her dying breath. She's always been really sharp, very witty, quick on her feet, improviser, actress, comedian, director, producer. She's done it all. It's gonna be a different world without Betty White, that is for sure. But yeah, condolences to her family and friends and people that worked with her. I never, unfortunately, got the privilege of working with her. I've auditioned for her production company, but yeah, it didn't get. I don't think I was because I wasn't a member of SAG at the time. I got the audition, and the casting director was really liked me, but she couldn't hire me because I wasn't a member of SAG. And that literally the next week, I became a member of SAG. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that stinks. It stinks, but I mean, all of the laughs that she's provided, um, the life that she lived, it was rich and uh, affected a lot of people. So, take the good with everything that she's done. But yeah, Betty White, rest in peace, my love. We absolutely appreciate and respect the hell out of your work and you as a person. So rest in peace. Don D says, Happy New Year, everyone. Awaiting aliens. Oh, wow. Now this, yeah. Life moves on. The sun will rise tomorrow. Benjamin Phillips, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, my good sir. Stephen Devine, hi all. Scotland in the house again. What's up, Scotland? Hello, Arlene, I think says Don D. Nose on the street. Happy New Year, Luis. Happy New Year to you. Peter Becker, Rich Dolan and Marty make it happen. Rich Dolan and Marty. Maybe we can make that happen. That would be I'll get with Grant Levac. I'm gonna be hitting up Grant Levac for some probably some refreshed Patreon promos in that vein. So I don't know. Look out for that. We'll see what happens. I haven't even asked him yet. I just literally thought that right now. Awaiting aliens. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Now I become death. She almost made it to 100 years old. She had one more month. She would have been 100. 99 though. That's not bad. That's a good run. That's a really good run. And it seems like she was super happy up until the end. So I would imagine she probably went out as good as you can. And yeah. Connor Wrigley. I saw that earlier. My wife and I couldn't believe how close she was to 100. That's really cool, Luis. Thank you. Happy New Year. Only celebrity that turned more famous with age. One of the few. Truly. I mean, she was famous back in the day. She's been famous her whole life for she is essentially was in show business from 1930 to 2021. So what is that? 92 years, I think. She's been famous, or yeah, she's a gem. She's a Hollywood gem and someone that will be remembered for a long time. Happy, Tori Wordsmith. Happy to you. Oh wow. Now this Happy New Year to all of you from Panama. Welcome back, Panama. Gabriel, thank you for being here. Let's see here. Betty White, my spirit animal. Rest in peace, Betty White. Happy New Year from Stephen Devine, especially the Geordies. What are Geordies? Birthday, January 17th, 1922. Rest in peace, Betty White. I'm glad you liked that, Ben. All right, you guys, let's get started with today's show. Thank you all for being here. Paisley Wave, thank you. UCR in 2021 has been my number one remote companion in early retirement. I truly appreciate that. Thank you so much. And congratulations on early retirement. Good for you. That's amazing. I wish Betty White shows up as a UAP. That would be amazing. All right, let's do it, you guys. So today's conversation, Peter Robbins, Michael Mataluni, Rather Be Squidding, and Avi Loeb. This was a really wonderful conversation. My favorite interview of the year. We got to learn about this porch that Avi Loeb has in the front of his house. A lot of people come and visit him on this porch, and man, I'm trying to convince him to get a 24-hour live stream cam on this porch, because I'm curious to know who else is coming to this porch. Maybe some Defense Department guys, scientists, astrophysicists, all sorts of wonderful minds coming to Avi Loeb's porch. So, we get to talk about that in this episode, and also the plans for Galileo in 2022, and what they expect to gain out of this research and how much money they need. And again, I think that's going to be. I have no idea how I'm going to do it. It's such a ridiculous thing to even think about, but to get the attention of Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or we'll see. However, I'll look up a couple more billionaires and see whose attention we could get to try and fund the Galileo project and SpaceX, or not SpaceX, UAPX, with the full funding they need. So we're talking 150 million at the least. 200 million would be perfect. 100 mil for Galileo, 100 mil for UAPX, and let these scientific entities go at it and see what else they can find. I'm sure there are other projects out there, but those two seem to be the ones that are looking at this from all angles and also applying the science to what they're looking at. So could be a part of what we're going to try and do for the big phone home. We'll see. I have no clue. Like, it's such a huge ask to get the attention of an Elon Musk or someone like that. But there's some billionaires out there that I think just need to be approached in the right way. And let's see if we could get them on the show and ask them for $100 million investment. Who knows? Maybe. We'll see. It probably won't work. Definitely won't work. But hey, why not? Don't know until you try. All right. So with that said, let's dive into the number one. Drum roll, please. And by the way, guys, there was a ton. I know I keep saying we're going to roll into this video, and then I keep stopping and talking about something else, but let's just kind of mood them in. There was a ton of runner-ups for this top 10. These I think are my personal favorite, the ones that I'm most proud of. But I could have put the whole big phone home. Honestly, I could have put the whole month of December into this top 10. The caliber from late November to December, or halfway through December, would have, every single interview we had on, I think, was an absolute gem. But I didn't want to load this list up with a whole bunch of recent interviews, even though the top two are very, very recent. So I saved those for, I just happened to be my favorite. I don't know, maybe it's because the growth of the show finally met a great opportunity for the interview and everything to just come together really nicely. But the top two shows I've really enjoyed, just personally, as someone who makes the show, produces the show. But thank you guys for all of the suggestions. A lot of your suggestions definitely went into making this list. And yeah, that's it. All right, let's get into it. Let's do it, you guys. Let's bring up the video. And you guys can, so here we go. This is a really great discussion, really great panel. It's about an hour and 15-minute conversation. So not a very long show today, but I hope you enjoy this conversation. Like I said, this is my absolute favorite conversation of 2021. I hope to put this panel together again soon here in 2022. I hope you enjoy. If you haven't already, like, share, subscribe. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Happy New Year. I love you all, and I'll see you in a little bit. We love hearing this gentleman, Mr. Avi Loeb. Hello, Avi. How are you?
Great to see you all.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you back. I know we've got a pretty wild weekend ahead for you. I know on later this week, and you're going to be having a discussion with Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo in the same, not room, but, digital space. So we're looking forward to that conversation. If you guys don't know, that's Max Moskovich's channel. If you don't know who he is, shame on you. Go check his channel out. He gets the best interviews, and he somehow wrangles these. I don't know how he does it. I told when I heard he booked the three of you guys for one thing, I was like, can you start booking our shows? Because you're amazing.
You have to understand that they are both members of the Galileo project.
Right.
They are research affiliates. But actually, I should tell you that my day was not boring so far. I mean, I had a team from Norway that showed up on the porch of my home and interviewed me for an hour and a half. And we had the Galileo team meetings today, two of them. Each of them lasted about an hour and a half. So it was a busy day.
I can't imagine a day that is not busy for Avi Loeb. What were you going to say, brother?
Well, yeah. Are all the research associates in those meetings, or how big are those Galileo meetings at this point?
Not all, but for example, today we had about 53 people that joined us. Altogether, we have about 100 scientists, which is quite remarkable given that the project started only 4 months ago. And I should say, I got thousands of emails from people that are supportive and offered help. And the most unusual experience I had was last week. I participated in the Ignatius Forum in the Washington National Cathedral, along with Bill Nelson, the head of NASA, Avril Haines, the director of national intelligence, Jeff Bezos from Blue Origin and Amazon, and David Wilkinson, who is a theologian from Durham University. And at the end, when it ended, I mean, I can tell you some more about it, but when it was over...
Oh, we all watched it, Avi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, glued to the screen.
Okay, so I'll tell you something you haven't seen, which is at the end, when it all ended, all the speakers left the auditorium, and there was a line of more than 50 people that wanted to speak with me, and they stood very patiently, and I spoke with each and every one of them. And the message that came repeating itself is that, people are really excited about the Galileo project, and they came all the way from New York City, from New Jersey, from Florida, from Boston, to just tell me that. And that was heartwarming. This was the first time I went out of the Boston area to a public event. And when I left the taxi in order to enter the cathedral, as soon as I opened the door of the taxi, someone said, "Are you Avi Loeb?" To me, that was quite unusual because nobody would recognize me a year ago. I bet.
Well, pretty soon you're going to have your own television show this fall on CBS. But here's
let me repeat what I said to my publicist from England. When my book came out and it did quite well, the publicist said, "Good job, Avi. You're selling the book quite well, speaking on all these podcasts." And I told him, "No, I'm not trying to sell the book. I'm just trying to convey a message. And if the public didn't like my message, the book wouldn't sell very well, but I wouldn't change my message. I don't really care how many likes I get on Twitter and how much the public appreciates the message. I'm just conveying what seems right to me."
Wait a second. I thought you don't have a Twitter handle.
I don't.
Galileo project does.
Just making sure. But I'll be honest, the funniest part of that whole cathedral conference or presentation was I loved how you slipped in, and we're still looking for funding. You're out there trying to raise some dollars, and I appreciate it.
But you have to understand, I do that because the goal is important to me, and what I would like to do is accomplish a comprehensive research program on the nature of unidentified aerial phenomena, and at the same time on objects like Oumuamua that enter the solar system from outside. And I should say, when I sat in the audience, I sat next to the director of national intelligence, Avril Haines, and it was really funny. Something you haven't seen is on stage, Jeff Bezos was saying that he was inspired by watching Star Trek at a young age, and that's why William Shatner was invited to fly on one of his vehicles. And I told Avril, who sat next to me, I said, I never liked the Star Trek. I don't like science fiction because the storyline makes no sense. It violates the laws of physics. And she said, I actually was also inspired by Star Trek, and we have to work on you. So that's the other thing that makes me a little different. But it's true. What drives me is accomplishing the science involved, so that we can clear up the fog, shed better light on these objects that we don't fully understand. And the one thing that motivates me since I was a kid, sitting in the dinner table and asking a difficult question, the adults in the room would basically pretend they know the answer, or in the worst case, they would actually dismiss the question. And that's what bothers me about this subject as well, because I feel like I'm the kid in this Danish folk tale that said the emperor has no clothes. And in this case, what I mean by the emperor is this approach of the mainstream in the academic community towards this subject, basically ignoring it, ridiculing it, and that is mentioned actually in the ODNI report to Congress on the 25th of June, the fact that this subject was stigmatized. And I think it's about time for scientists to get engaged, and we have more than 100 of them on the Galileo team.
Well, let's get into the meat of this real quick. Witness citizen Sean Ross, he just did an interview with a couple of days ago, which was amazing. Says congrats on the Amazon's top seller. And then Eventide is just saying Avi is the man. So thank you guys so much for the donations. Really appreciate it. So yeah, let's dive into it, because the last time we spoke, we were talking about you don't want government help. You don't want government intervention. We don't want government dollars, because you want to be able to release the information, share it with the public without any stipulations. And that was awesome. And then we hear of an announcement that you're joining forces with Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo, who we love on the show. We know behind the scenes, especially when it comes to the Gillibrand Amendment, have done amazing work that nobody sees. And they're carrying the torch on this without wanting the credit. And it's very similar to you. You're not looking for fame. You're looking to move the conversation forward scientifically and from a government. Well, not you specifically, but for them to, they're trying to get it seriously taken from a legislative perspective. So explain to us, how did this happen? Why do you think it's a good idea? And do you think it muddies the waters as far as government intervention into the project? Because Christopher Mellon is definitely still very close tied with people in our government agencies. And Lou Elizondo is a contractor for the government. So go for it. What do you say to that?
Well, it's an excellent question. And so there are two parts to the question. One has to do with data. Okay, and the Galileo project will focus on open data that it assembles with its own instruments. So we are not interested in any classified data in the research program of the Galileo project. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to shake the hand of someone that knows something about classified data. I will not ask for any access to that data, and this person would not violate any vow that he made to the government of not releasing that information. So everything is fine. We can talk about other things, like, for example, the data that we collect with the Galileo telescopes. Okay, so the reason I brought in both Lou and Chris under the tent of the Galileo project is a different one. And it was not to get any access to classified information. And that goes to the second part of my answer. It's because I believe in evidence guiding us. Okay, as a scientist, I don't care about prejudice. I don't care about what people believe in to start with. So both Chris and Lou are advocates for this cause of, these were unusual objects. We have some information that we cannot really release. And they are advocates for looking further into the classified data that the government owns. But at the same time, I also allowed under the tent skeptics One of them is Michael Shermer,
Mhm.
and another one is Seth Shostak.
Yeah.
And so just to give you an anecdote from the end of a research team meeting today, Michael Shermer presented the statistical considerations about, if we identify something unusual, how to interpret the statistics. Okay.
Mhm.
And at the end, I said it to him. I said, hopefully we'll get good enough data, good enough evidence that we will not need the statistics because it will be clear. And I said to him, if that happens, I would like you to change the name of your magazine from Skeptic to Believer. Now, the other thing, so my view in general is that given, if indeed data guides us, if indeed evidence will be beyond a reasonable doubt, then it doesn't really matter what people's opinions are to start with. And that's why you need to bring everyone under the tent. It's not a political discussion, right? It's not a philosophical discussion.
Yeah.
If there is the goal that unites everyone under the Galileo umbrella is let's collect new and high quality data such that we will figure out what the answer is. And if we are all united by this goal, then there is nothing to worry about people having different opinions to start with. And that's the beauty of science. You see, if I cannot convince with the data skeptics, then the data is not good enough. Right. So it doesn't really matter whether they are in the tent or outside the tent. The data is simply not. But if the data is good enough, then I don't care what they started from. Right. So now coming back to the Gillibrand amendment, I'm very supportive of that. And as you know, the director of the Galileo project is given the privilege of selecting 3 members of the advisory committee that is mentioned in the amendment. And that's, I find that as a great privilege, if indeed it will be approved by the Senate and Congress, because that's a similar privilege to the NASA administrator that is selecting 3 members, and the president of the National Academies of Sciences selects 2, and the president of the National Academy of Engineering selects 2. So,
we get 3, right? The Galileo project gets 3.
Yeah, we get 3. So we are in a good company, and now the question is, who will be these members? That's something for me to think about if it gets approved. And the point is, whoever serves on that committee, who gets exposed to classified information, will not, will not transmit that information to the research program of the Galileo project. We are completely divorced from that in our research agenda. We are interested in open data that we assemble ourselves. But at the same time, if that amendment leads to better analysis of classified data, of a better coordination within the government, better transparency about this matter altogether, it's complementary to what the Galileo project is doing. And I'm very much in favor of that.
Peter, you had a question?
Yeah, 2 things. And Avi, wonderful meeting you. When you were speaking before, I was thinking of the youngest child at the Seder that asked the questions that other people can't ask. But people like Shermer and Shostak, they masquerade as skeptics. The fact is, we all not only need to be skeptics, but we have to be the best skeptics, because if we associate ourselves with alleged information or material that really does not bear up under scientific scrutiny, it hurts the whole field. They are debunkers. And for me, it can be reduced to a mantra. For them, it can't be, therefore it isn't, therefore it must be something else. And it's my job to pat you on the head and give you a pseudo-scientific explanation based on either my own rejection of the idea or my own anxiety in dealing with it. That said, I'm very curious. Was there a time when you were younger when you thought that there really was not much to this possibility of truly anomalous UFO phenomena from points unknown under intelligent control with advanced technology? And what was it that brought you into that realm of understanding that this is very real and that there is this tremendous pre-existing bias in the world of academia and official science, so to say, that needed to be addressed?
Right. So I was completely agnostic on this issue because I didn't study it before. But what brought me into it was the discovery of this first interstellar object that came into the solar system and found near Earth called Oumuamua back in 2017. And at first, just like everyone else, I thought maybe it's a rock. But the problem was that, first of all, we didn't expect a rock from another star based on calculations that I've done a decade earlier. There aren't enough rocks to explain this detection. But moreover, the properties of this object were quite unusual, quite weird. And I, coming from other areas of astronomy and cosmology, I'm used to the situation where if you see something that doesn't quite line up with what you expect, you start to raise possibilities. And to me, it sounded completely legitimate to come up with the hypothesis that this object is artificial, simply because it had so many anomalies that could not be explained otherwise. And I rest my case now because all 4 possibilities that were suggested by other astronomers to explain it from a natural origin, all of them invoke something that we've never seen before. And so I keep arguing that it's just like a caveman that meets a cell phone and is used to playing with rocks all of his life. He would argue the cell phone is a rock of a type that I've never seen before. That's the natural thing. But of course, the best way to convince yourself is to get more data. And my point is, irrespective if someone is a debunker, the point is, if I show that someone an image, high resolution, a megapixel image that shows an object with bolts and screws, or maybe even a label saying made on exoplanet Y, okay, if I show that and it still declines the possibility of an extraterrestrial technological origin, then, I think that person would not be regarded seriously. It's just like in the court. If you have good enough evidence, the verdict is obvious. And that's the goal of the Galileo project, to get sufficiently high quality data such that nobody would be able to refute it.
Real quick, Avi, you mentioned this, and just to go back to Elizondo, real quick, you mentioned when we first talked to you on the Singularity Lab about this, that you weren't going to look at classified data, but you were willing to talk to people who could point you in the right direction. It seems that Elizondo and Mellon might be some of those people that can point you in a direction to look. Is that and I know we read on the actual Galileo Project website that this is going to be their role. Is this something that's been, are you focused on this now, or is this coming later? Like, to what degree are they guiding you on where to point the telescopes now?
Our super chat question also is kind of asking the same thing. Like, will Lou and Chris not be able to tell you where to put the sensors, but Avi, could they tell you a lot of where not to put them?
Right. Well, it's too preliminary at this point because we just started purchasing instruments that we will put together in the coming months on the roof of the Center for Astrophysics on the Harvard University campus. So we are still not at the point where we have an operating telescope system that we can deploy at various locations. But indeed, there are 2 ways by which people with a knowledge base of Lou and Chris can contribute. One is in terms of guiding us as to where might be good locations. Another is societal implications. If we do detect something, what would be the implications for society? What would be the protocol? How do we deal with such information? At the moment, there is very limited discussion on this subject. And I actually wrote an essay in Medium on this issue of lack of protocol. Right now, my view is, if we do detect equipment that seems to be extraterrestrial, the first thing to do is collect as much information about what its intent might be, what kind of information is it trying to collect, and how does it respond to what we do. in a passive way, not engaging with it. And then, of course, we'll have to go into a very detailed discussion as to what to do about it.
I think, but that second point you made, I think you hit on something very big, and I think this is why I've heard pushback about Elizondo and Mellon being on the Galileo project in an advisement role, because their concern is if you're doing this separate from the government, and then Lou and Mellon are helping to disseminate this information or helping you to decide how to disseminate the information, that then it's going to be wrapped up in a sort of governmental disclosure. That's the fear.
So no, they will not be involved. I mean, they're not scientists. You have to understand. So we have a team of scientists that will analyze the data, and in the standard scientific way, the data will be open. The analysis will be transparent. We will write scientific papers and submit them to scientific journals. And that is not something that either Lou or Chris have expertise in. They are not scientists. So the way that the data is analyzed or released is not in their jurisdiction. We see.
That's good to know.
Yeah, we see the contribution of people that are not scientists as a contribution to the bigger picture of what the implications of something, and also in terms of the knowledge base about the history of events and so forth. Which locations might be good for us to look at and things like that. And it's sort of more in a general context.
Well, here's kind of a hypothetical for you. What if Lou and Mellon kind of tell you to look at a specific area, and it turns out the reason for that is because the government is trying to kind of do a test and see if they can pass off their tech as extraterrestrial, and they're kind of using you to do that.
Okay.
If you did that and found that it was military tech, how would you address that? How would you release that data?
I should say, first of all, scientists are smart. Okay, so
fair enough.
If someone tries to fool us, we might actually figure it out pretty quickly.
Would you tell us though that they were trying to fool you?
Oh, we are okay. So here is the advantage of being a scientist. You don't need to pretend. You can you're not a politician. You can be sincere, honest, straightforward. The way I try to deliberate. And in a way, you don't have to do calculations. It's not politics where you have to convince a large crowd that they would vote for you. That's not the goal here. The goal is to speak the truth and figure out what reality is like. And most of the sky is not classified. And we hope to get, a lot of telescope systems, hundreds of. It all depends on the funding. That's why I'm trying to convince, people that have the wealth to help us, because it's really crucial for us to have hundreds of telescope systems such that, we can cover enough of the sky. And then, I had two reports about the event, the forum that took place at the Washington National Cathedral. And it was interesting for me because I was in the company of two reverends when I spoke. And, the intersection between spirituality, religion, and extraterrestrial life is quite interesting because if you think about it, Jeff Bezos spoke before me, and he was talking about business plans of bringing millions of people to space. And there is no business plan that you can think of leaving the solar system. You cannot make money out of that. And the only reason to do that would be spiritual.
The world's been waiting for what you do.
Sorry, guys. We'll get through this commercial together.
And so if you think about what might visit us, it's not about business.
That's fair. That's an interesting viewpoint. Yeah. What do you got, Peter?
Yeah. The level of ridicule that has caused so many in the scientific and academic communities to remain silent on this if they had opinions or felt that there was something to this phenomena is legend. It goes back to the summer of 1947. And in the past 4 years, we have seen that ridicule factor diminish tremendously, more than in the previous 70 years.
I'm doing my best.
Yes. And you're at Harvard, arguably, the the flagship, along with, say, Princeton and Yale of American, academic elitism and excellence in terms of education. 20 years ago, my late friend and colleague, Dr. John Mack, was censured by Harvard, the first professor to have been censured since the 60s, and Timothy Leary. Unlike Leary, he came back with his attorney, Daniel Sheehan, to establish that there was a basis for him to take seriously accounts of genuine contact and abduction, so to say, and was reinstated in Harvard. It's a very different climate right now, and you're approaching it much more pragmatically. Have you had anybody higher up, in the administration look at you cross-eyed on this, so to say, or it seems to be that it's something that has general support among the faculty and the administration?
Well, first of all, let me explain that I'm very different than Mac, because he was using humans as detectors. In physics, humans cannot be detectors. You cannot write a physics scientific paper saying this person told me that. It doesn't hold water. And the reason is simple. People have hallucinations, they have wishful thinking. You cannot believe people. Look at politics. And therefore, in physics, what matters are measurements by instruments. Okay? And that makes physics very different than human psychology. Okay? So I am very different than John obviously both of us shared the Harvard University, but very different approach to this matter. Now, when I wanted to establish the Galileo project, after a few wealthy individuals visited the porch of my home, and by the way, this
porch is legendary, by the way. I got to get on this porch.
If you could be a fly on your porch, Avi Loeb, holy cow.
I should tell you, like, for example, a day ago, I had a visit by two people, a married couple that brought me a plant that their daughter sent, and we planted it in the backyard. And they came over because they were very inspired by my book. And I get a lot of interesting visitors, and so anyway, coming back to what I was talking about before, I was funded at an interesting level, a few $1 million, and that allowed me to establish the Galileo project. And then when I contacted the higher administration at Harvard, I was asked, before they allowed me to funnel the funds through Harvard, they asked me, is this part of your day job? Okay. And I said, well, if I look back at my career, over the past few decades, all I did was analyze data that was obtained by telescopes and interpret it. And the Galileo project is doing exactly that. We plan to use telescopes, assemble data, and analyze it. Now, in astronomy, there is no lower limit as to how far a source can be to be of interest. We look at meteors, we look at asteroids, comets, at the sun. These are nearby objects, relatively speaking, compared to the size of the universe. And astronomy is more about, figuring out the big picture. And, if we have objects that are near Earth that came from far away, they are part of astronomy. So what I'm doing is astronomy. So after I sent that email, it was approved. The project was approved as being part of my day job. And I don't see any issue with that. I have 4 undergraduates within Harvard that approached me and wanted to work on the project voluntarily. All of the members, including Lou and Chris, approached me. It's not as if I went out and tried to bring in people. And we have more than 100 scientists. And it's quite remarkable because when I wrote my book, I said, if we engage in this subject of checking whether there is equipment from other civilizations near Earth, we will bring more funds to science and we will bring more talent to science. And I was attacked. And I rest my case now, because the Galileo project brought funds to science that were not allocated to other projects before, and it brought unusual talent, and the young people are really excited about it. But what bothers me is the toxic atmosphere surrounding this subject, because it does suppress free thought, and it does suppress innovation.
Yep.
I'm trying to counteract that as much as I can.
And that is primarily, it sounds like it's primarily not coming from this side of the fence. And when I mean this side, I mean the free thinkers, the people who either believe in the topic or at least want to have somebody look into it more. It seems like that pushback is coming from our scientists, which is wild. And so let me ask you this real quick, because I want to clear this up for some folks here in the UAP community, the UFO community. So what I'm gathering by what you're saying is that just eyewitness testimony alone is not enough, correct? Is that fair to say? Can you sort of elaborate? And is there any sort of advice that you would give to people who have started a belief system based off of just eyewitness testimony or hearsay?
Well, indeed, our eyes are detectors of light.
Right.
And our ears are detectors of sound. But we developed instruments that, like microphones, that are better detectors of sound, and cameras that are better detectors of light. Now, the problem with humans is that all of this information goes into their brain, and then you have to ask whether there is a filter in the brain that is not giving you reliable information afterwards, because people want to believe they saw something that they didn't really see, or you have to worry about it. Whereas in an instrument like a camera or a microphone, you don't have that. It goes straight through. By the way, I see a better future for science, because at some point we will have artificial intelligence systems that you can feed scientific data to, and they will do the scientific work. I call that AI scientists. And the reason I see that as a better practice of science is because they will not have egos. They will not have an agenda to pretend that they are experts, that they know more than they actually know. If they see an object like Oumuamua that looks weird, it doesn't look like a comet or an asteroid, the AI system will say it doesn't look like an asteroid or a comet that we have seen before. And if it sees that it looks like 2020 SO, an object, a rocket booster that we launched in 1966 that was discovered a year ago, then and was pushed away from the sun by reflecting sunlight without a cometary tail, then this AI scientist would say, it looks like a rocket booster to me. And there would not be any ego attached. There would not be any attacks on social media, because it's an AI system. It doesn't care. It will just analyze the data. So I feel that science could advance much more rapidly in the future if AI systems will replace humans as scientists.
Well, speaking a little bit of the sensor arrays that Galileo is looking to implement, we had a question here from our friend Bradley Voorhees, who asks, will the Galileo sensors arrays include spectrometers? I want to know if the light that people see radiating from UAP, I want to know if that light is actually daylight coming through a wormhole.
Okay, so the first is, we have several phases in the instrumentation. The first phase will be, and that's something we are starting to assemble in the coming weeks. The first would be a relatively simple telescope system that will look at the entire sky with optical cameras that basically see reflected sunlight during the day and cannot see anything during the night, obviously. But it will be complemented by an infrared system that will have sensors looking at the entire sky in the infrared, so it could see warm objects at night out to similar distances of several miles, away. So we will look at the sky, take a video of the sky in both optical, visible light, and infrared light, and that already, that gives you information in 2 bands, which can say something about the spectrum of the emission. But of course, if we have enough light, we could use a spectrograph, and we hope to do that to get more information about maybe the composition of the object. And then we will have radio sensors that will try to detect radio waves from such objects, and audio sensors. So altogether, we'll try to collect as much data as possible within the limitation of the budget that we have. And a single system like that may be $100,000, $200,000. And then we could perhaps construct 5 to 10 such systems with the budget that we have now. The hope is that, if we get $100 million, as I hope we will, then we can produce 100 systems or hundreds of systems like that, and then spread them in many locations and get a much better analysis of the sky.
Speaking of $100 million, did you get the chance to speak with Jeff Bezos privately?
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. You were definitely nudging some people in that audience. Hey, by the way, we're looking for funding. I loved it. I think it's great.
I mentioned our needs, but at this point, it didn't lead to any helpful.
Después de un accidente de auto, visita losdefensores.com.
Consequences.
Rather, what do you got?
Well, let's say that you are fully funded and that we get all these telescopes out there, and you're sitting there searching for 10 years and you don't find anything. What point can you say that no results equal UAPs aren't real, or how does that conversation go?
Well, that's an excellent question, because you can see the same discussion in the context of dark matter. So, 40 years ago, we started searching for the nature of dark matter. We know that there is much more stuff out there than ordinary matter that we are made of, at least 5 times more, and we don't know what it is. And 40 years ago, people suggested maybe it's weakly interacting massive particles. So a lot of laboratories built experiments that would search for such particles, and there were some properties of these particles that we searched for and ruled them out. So by now, the original particles that were envisioned could not exist as dark matter. And the limits are way down by orders of magnitude. After 40 years, hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on this. We also looked for signatures in the sky of such particles. We haven't found it. So after 40 years, hundreds of millions of dollars, we are empty-handed. And I asked one of these experimentalists, I said, how long will you continue? Okay, that's your question, right? You keep putting limits, and won't at some point, you have a finite life, so you have to decide strategically whether you continue in the search, even though you push down the limits, or you move on to do something else. And that person said, as long as I'm funded, I will continue. And he's still funded. So it's part of the mainstream. My point is, if we search for equipment from other civilizations near Earth, and we do it for 40 years, and we spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and we don't find anything, then we would be at exactly the same point as the mainstream of dark matter searches is right now. Okay? And if you ask me, I would expect to find something by then.
What do you got, Peter?
Love that answer.
Avi, as you continue to work with your team to develop new funding for these projects, as the project advances, gains more public acceptance, do you personally feel at this point that you're educating yourself on this subject, the data you're collecting, the evidence that you are seeing leads you to conclude, and I'll use the word conclude rather than believe, that some or any truly anomalous UFO phenomena do in fact represent highly advanced technology under intelligent control from parts unknown?
Yeah, what I would say is there is definitely evidence or data that is very intriguing that we should examine more carefully, and it's not conclusive. That's why we are doing the research, because if it was conclusive, there wouldn't be any need for the Galileo project. So that's the way science is done. It's you are advancing your knowledge. Now, what many scientists say is, until we are given extraordinary evidence, we won't even engage in this discussion. And my point is, you would never get that evidence unless you fund the search. That's an obvious, my daughter, she's a teenager. She understands that. Why is it so difficult to understand that it's a circular argument to require? I think it's Carl Sagan that basically said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. My reply to that is extraordinary conservatism leads to extraordinary ignorance. And the point is, if you don't look through the windows of your home, you can claim that you don't have neighbors because you don't see them. You can sit on the sofa and just like Enrico Fermi say, where is everybody? You're sitting at home on the sofa. You're not looking through the windows. Where is everybody? Of course. If you didn't open the door, if you didn't look through the windows, you can ask, where is everybody? And everyone would say, I need extraordinary evidence that I have neighbors. I don't see that in my home. Therefore, I will not even look at the window. Now,
they're all on your porch.
My point
they're all on your. All they got to do is go to the porch, Avi.
No, my point is simple. Take a telescope, look through the window, and only then the discussion will be substantive. And the point is, it's not a philosophical discussion. Just like whether the Earth moves around the sun or the sun moves around the Earth is not a philosophical discussion. Now, there were these philosophers saying, we don't want to look through your telescope to Galileo, and they put him in house arrest. Today, they would have canceled him on social media. And the point
you remind me, when you mentioned the Sagan quote, of a wonderful quote from Max Planck, Nobel Award-winning physicist, which was, science advances one funeral at a time.
Yeah, one way to figure out the truth is, as you get better and better data, if your signal gets weaker and weaker, then you know that it's not real. If it gets stronger and stronger, you know that there is something to it.
Yeah.
And that's why getting more data is important. And the point is that, it's really all about collecting the evidence. And nowadays, when we send out spacecraft, for missions, we do it based on the knowledge that started with Galileo that the Earth moves around the sun. Nobody remembers those philosophers. At the time, they were more powerful, politically speaking, than Galileo. And poor Galileo was in house arrest because of them. And imagine what he thought. He couldn't communicate with people. They wanted him to stay at home. And nobody remembers those philosophers. There are some historians of science that remember their names, but the point is they were completely useless to advancing our knowledge because they didn't base it on data. And my point is, if you follow the data, then you have some chance of learning something new.
There's a really fun clip floating around of you on social media of you speaking at a SETI, I guess, discussion with a bunch of SETI scientists. And I can't remember her name, but she basically said she accused you of throwing science under the bus.
Oh.
And I've never seen you this animated ever. So I'm curious to know, because I thought your response was awesome, but I am curious to know what has changed SETI's mind and convinced them this has to do with G. West's question here. It was surprising that Seth Shostak got on board with the Galileo project after making light of UAP subject in years past. What changed his mind?
Well, so you have to ask yourself, why was the SETI community negative about this discussion? And my understanding is, that this community didn't get the respect it deserves for decades, okay? And when you don't get the respect you deserve, and in my vocabulary, respect means funding, okay? If you don't get it, you are always very cautious at satisfying the people that do not treat you with respect. So if someone else says, look, you are mistreated, you say, please be quiet, because those people that mistreat me will mistreat me even more if you speak out. And so that is my understanding. And frankly, as I said before, I don't care about it because, I came from different fields, like studying the universe, cosmology, studying black holes. And in those fields, my experience was when something unusual shows up, you talk about possibilities and you talk about them in a courageous way. You just say, this is a possibility, let's collect more data, and you explain to the experimentalists what needs to be done in order to rule in or rule out those hypotheses. That's standard practice in cosmology. A lot of ideas are floated and then you test them. Okay, that's standard practice. Then I come to this field and there is this unusual object, Oumuamua, and I say, let's entertain the possibility. And then people jump at me and attack me personally and say, you're throwing science under the bus. I'm not throwing science under the bus. On the contrary, I'm just putting science in the bus.
I love it.
I'm saying, let's discuss this subject like adults. Let's collect more evidence. Let's treat it with dignity. Let's get it funded 1,000 times more than it is now, so that it, gets the respect it deserves. That's all I'm saying, and I'm being attacked for that. So my point is, just why don't you join forces with me, and let's move it forward. Let's get more funding. Let's get more talent engaged in it, so that we can get to the bottom of it. Figure out whether there are objects near Earth that might be of extraterrestrial technological origin. That's all. That's all I wanted, and that's all I want right now. Now, the amazing thing is that the tide changed over the past few months. And, one of the things that happened was in Washington, D.C., the Gillibrand amendment, that shows respect for the Galileo project. I see that as a very positive development because I think it encourages scientific inquiry into this question. The fact that it recognizes the Galileo project means that the government or the Senate or whoever supports it, whoever thinks that it's a good idea, believes that a team of 100 scientists or more looking into this subject is a good idea.
Yeah.
And by the way, the public thinks it's a good idea. So I now have a lot of support. And I didn't change the tune at all. From day one, I was advocating for that. And of course, it feels like, if you swim in the ocean and there are big waves, sometimes they carry you down and you get hit on the ground and then they carry you up. I don't care about those things. I'm just trying to swim towards the target, which is shedding light on this, on these objects, trying to figure out their nature. And we can do it. It's not a philosophical discussion. We can use instruments to figure it out. And that's what I'm trying to do.
I think the biggest challenge is it starts from this place, and we know how much negativity there has been in the scientific community and in academia to even look at it, to even hypothesize that these objects could be here already is the real problem, right? Even there's a documentary called Planet B, and it looks like it's going to be a very interesting documentary. And it's a scientific look into exoplanets and Goldilocks planets and habitable zones around the star systems in our galaxy. And even in the trailer for that, every single person's going, we're not looking for little green men. We're not, and it's like, why does that have to be the baseline? Why can't we just have a conversation about an unknown and talk about it like an unknown? And I think that's a lot of people's frustration.
Yeah, I was asked this question by the Norwegian filming crew that came to my porch today. And
this porch, Avi. Oh my goodness, man! Can I please set up a live cam of the porch, kind of like watching an eagle's nest? We'll just have a 24-hour stream of this porch. I think it would be gangbusters.
We could use it to raise money.
Porch. I mean,
we could use it to raise money, Avi. That's a great suggestion.
Okay. At any event, the answer to the question, what sets up this. Sorry, you distracted.
I threw you off.
Way to go, Luis.
The little green men base. The basis of
the baseline is always somehow either it's scientific or it's little green men, and it can't be anywhere in between. And it's so frustrating.
Right. The point is that it's a circular argument, and I think much of the reason that the scientists develop this attitude is because the public is so interested in this question, and scientists, prefer not to engage in something that is of such great interest to the public, because obviously there are lots of falsehoods that are being promoted. At the same time, people make speculations that physics is violated, that all kinds of things, and scientists want to be careful and protect their image and remain experts. But my point is, 1,000 years ago, there were speculations about the human body. A lot of people said it has a soul, therefore we shouldn't have anatomy, operations of the human body. And, some of these ideas were completely wrong. They were saying if we operate the human body, we will hurt the soul of a person. We know that's not true now. I mean, we are actually operating people to help them cure problems they have. And imagine the scientists saying there is a lot of nonsense being said about the human body. We don't want to engage in it. It's controversial, which is pretty much what is being said about the UAP or UFOs. And in that case, modern medicine would not be where it is. So my point is, even if people say nonsense about the subject, that doesn't remove it from the scientific agenda. What should bring it into the scientific agenda is, first of all, that there are some anomalies, that we see things that we don't fully understand. So science is supposed to clear up the fog, give us more information so we can act responsibly. We understand what reality is about. That's the first trigger. For me, that was the trigger. Oumuamua, and then afterwards, the report from ODNI to Congress that triggered the Galileo project. And the second thing is that, if we have the instruments, the scientific capability to address this subject, and the public cares so much about it, we must do it, because knowing reality is always to our benefit. Knowing what the human body is made of internally is to the benefit of medicine. And, if we find out that we are not the smartest kid on the block, that there are things floating around us, that would change the way we think of our future, our aspirations for space. There are questions about what we can learn from them and from a smarter kid on the. There are lots of things, lots of implications, and just ignoring reality and saying there is nothing out there without looking through our windows is a mistake, in my view. As a scientist, I want to understand reality, to the best of my ability. And talking about the multiverse instead, which is something you cannot test experimentally, or talking about extra dimensions that we cannot see, talk about string theory landscape that we cannot see. Things like that are mainstream. Nevertheless, to me, they make less sense than talking about something like us on another planet, simply because, half of the stars like the sun have a planet like the Earth, roughly at the same separation. Many of them existed for billions of years before us, before the sun. And so we just need to check if, someone predated us that was even more advanced than we are. Why is that a problem? Why do we feel as if, that offends us to discuss this possibility? Why do we feel that we need extraordinary evidence before we engage in this? We never asked for extraordinary evidence before we engage in the search for weakly interacting massive particles. I mean, of course, in general, we know dark matter perhaps exists. Even that is not clear because maybe gravity is modified. So my point is, science is a learning experience. And the way to learn is to courageously seek evidence, seek data, and learn from that, rather than ridicule the subject, feel that you are smart, and then play with mathematics that has no bearing on experiments, which is pretty much what is done.
Right.
Yep. Peter, you had something to say?
Yeah, just that I think the root of the dissonance in the scientific community and why this is all coming to a fore now and not decades ago is that in 1947, the American people were inundated with exaggerated information in the media that whatever this new phenomena was in the skies, it was not flying saucers and little green men. And the ridicule factor became so deeply entrenched in academia and the world of respected science that none dared violate it for fear of a hit or even destruction of their professional reputations. The last 4 years have been a breath of fresh air. And Avi, you really emblemize that new spirit in the scientific community internationally that is now courageously going after this data. And I think it's a very exciting time for those of us who have been in the work for longer than not to see this change and the ridicule basically evaporating, and people of all areas worthy of respect coming forward to add to this dialogue, and especially in the world of academia where this was a non-existent quotient for so many decades. And thank you for continuing to do the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. And the reason we are able to do that is partly because of the support from the public. And I'm echoing that support. We wouldn't be able to have the Galileo project without the support. So in a way, I resonate with the public because I don't regard myself as different from the public. I was not groomed at Harvard. I grew up on a farm, and I could have ended on the farm, and I might have been even happier there. I don't see myself as different from anyone else, and that's why I follow my common sense. You see, that's the other thing, that I'm not trying to demonstrate that I'm smart. I don't care if people attack me personally. That's not the issue at all. I'm really trying to figure out what is out there, and that was always my intention as a kid. And I'm still, you can think of me as a farm boy, that has a lifetime of experience, but is refusing to give up on curiosity, on innocence in a way, in favor of boosting my image and getting awards, honors, and recognition from my academic colleagues. That's not really what drives me, and I don't give a damn.
Avi, we've got a few more questions for you. Do you have a couple more minutes to give us?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you. So I did. Let me go ahead and ask this, because this question's been sitting here for a minute. I'm struck by Lieutenant Graves's testifying Navy pilots had daily encounters off of the eastern seaboard. Obviously, Galileo will focus sensors there. You should find UAP right away, no?
If that's true, yes. The point is, we have to be wary of military sites, and because obviously they're of national security importance, and we don't want to violate the law, and so there are sensitive areas that we probably will not be able to position our telescopes in, just because of national security concerns, and that's okay. But if indeed such objects are common, as was reported by Graves, then we should find them. The way I see it is like a low-hanging fruit. So there is this important poem by Robert Frost that talks about taking the path not taken, and that made all the difference for him. Okay, and for me, the advantage of taking the path not taken is because along the way, as you go along this path, you may see low-hanging fruit that nobody picked up. Why? Because nobody took this path. And so the point is, if we take a path that is original, just because it was ridiculed in the past, you have a chance of collecting easily low-hanging fruit.
I love it. Gentlemen, do you have any other questions for Avi?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, rather.
Well, yeah, there's another really interesting scientific endeavor going on, which is the James Webb Space Telescope. And I'm curious to your thoughts on if you think that's going to detect biosignatures out there, and if so, what would that mean for the Galileo project and the support of these endeavors?
So my first area of focus in astrophysics was the first stars and the first galaxies. It's sort of the scientific version of the story of Genesis, how the first light was produced. And I actually wrote 2 textbooks on this subject, and I helped pioneer this subject. And I was in the first advisory committee that designed the James Webb Space Telescope.
Wow.
Back then it was called the Next Generation Space Telescope. And we were aiming at building a telescope that will see the light from the first stars, the first galaxies. That was the main purpose. But of course, once you have an infrared telescope of this size, you can use it for a different purpose. And since then, there were exoplanets discovered, and one can look for example, I wrote a paper a few years ago that you can look for example, for biomarkers for molecules like oxygen in a planet near that goes around another star nearby, and in principle, perhaps say something about whether there is primitive life there. But that is very challenging with the James Webb Space Telescope. We really need the next generation of telescopes, which the astronomy community is advocating for in the latest decadal survey. But my point is, whenever we are looking for oxygen or methane, we should also look for industrial pollution, because oxygen did not exist for the first 2 billion years on Earth, even though there were microbes. So there was life on Earth for half of the age of the Earth. There was life without much oxygen in the atmosphere. So if we don't find oxygen, doesn't mean that there is no life on a planet. And if we do find, you can make it in other ways, so it will not be conclusive. But if you find CFCs, these are the molecules produced by refrigerating systems, by industries, then you know that not only there is life, but there is industrial life, and they are polluting their atmosphere like crazy. And why not use the same spectrograph to look for both? You don't hear that very often. I wrote a paper in 2015 suggesting that, and I do think that we should search for industrial pollution as well.
What do you got, Mike?
Makes sense.
I was just going to say, if you had the opportunity, obviously, to speak closely with Bill Nelson, did you guys have an opportunity to speak at all off camera? And if you were interested in any way with working with NASA in relationship to the Galileo project?
Well, unfortunately, Bill Nelson had to attend the launch on the day of the event in Washington. He was supposed to be there, but then the launch was supposed to be a day later, but then because it was advanced, he missed the event, but he was recorded on video. And then since early June, I heard him speak quite clearly on CNN saying that he saw some of the classified information as a senator on UAP. That was a few weeks before the ODNI report was delivered to Congress, and he said that scientists should look into that. And shortly after hearing that, I approached some people in NASA and said, I'll be happy to help you make your boss happy. And it didn't materialize, but I'm always willing to engage in collaboration with NASA, because I think NASA, part of its mission is to search for life in the universe. And of course, they are engaged in the search for primitive life, but the search for intelligent life should get a higher priority, and including, trying to figure out the nature of UAP. And, I would be very happy, of course, to speak with Bill Nelson about it. I think we resonate on this subject, and I will be happy to collaborate in obtaining open data on this subject, because I very much agree with his sentiment that scientists should look into it. So I think we are fully in agreement. If we were to meet, we wouldn't have to say much to each other, because we pretty much agree on everything.
I love it. Peter, did you have any last questions for Avi?
Just that I hope somewhere down the road, and right now I know you have your hands more than full with your colleagues, there is a whole nother area of study. And part of it revolves around, I will say, witness testimony, but as close to unimpeachable as it can be. Best example I can give you is on October 19th, there was a press conference at the National Press Club involving 4 former United States Air Force officers, all of whom in the 60s and 70s had been involved as nuclear missile launch officers to one degree or another, who had UFOs come in over their bases, and while they watched, their missiles all shut down. We have a history of this going back decades, also the Soviet Union.
One of them, a research affiliate of the Galileo project, Bob Salas. He became a research fellow affiliate of the Galileo project just yesterday, and he was in the meeting today.
Great. That's wonderful to hear. You've answered my question.
Awesome. Oh, okay. That was your question.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we had Bob on the show.
Wanted to hear too.
Yeah. So that we had a question from the audience, and he asked, thank you so much for the donation. Avi, will there be anything in the Galileo project that allows us, the average Joe, to contribute?
Well, there might be. For example, if we develop small telescope systems that are relatively cheap and we want to distribute them in many locations, there might be some way for private citizens to contribute their porch or a place for us to put the telescope in. And but we are not there yet. And there might be also an opportunity to analyze data because it will be open, so we can ask people to dive into the data and look for things that we may have missed, things like that. We are not there yet, but within a year or two, maybe there will be opportunities of this type. And for now, what we need is to get funded at a level that would allow us to move forward. And also, of course, get support. And I think in terms of support from the public, we couldn't have imagined something better than we already have. And also support from Washington. I find that remarkable. I'm hopeful that eventually it will become mainstream also in academia. And there will be a department in each university on this subject.
Can I ask you, because I thought of the idea before Michael said it, I swear to God, Michael, but when you had first mentioned, right when you came on the show that you had just gotten off a telephone, I'm assuming what would be a telephone call or a conference call. Am I correct? Or was this sort of like a Zoom meeting?
No, it's a Zoom meeting. That's the way we handle our team meetings. So we haven't yet, most of the members of the Galileo team haven't met in person, but we do hope to do so later in 2022 to meet in person. But nowadays, Zoom allows us to basically operate very efficiently, very effectively.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I asked that question is because, and I'm serious when I say this, if those conversations, in your opinion, are okay to listen to publicly, I don't know why you guys aren't streaming those conversations and trying to raise money for the project at the same time. I know that it might sound silly, but I think it's a great opportunity to not only let the public sort of see how you guys are working and how the scientific process is being discussed by scientists, but it also allows an opportunity to be like, hey, I like what these guys are doing. Let me throw them a couple bucks.
Right. No, so we are developing outreach materials and eventually we'll distribute them. But you have to understand the way that the scientific work is done is you have to be careful not to confuse people from outside in the sense of, there is a procedure. You build the experiment, you then collect the data, then you make sure that everything works okay, and then you release it. But if you were to allow everything to be transparent, then it will be confusing to people that are not experts. And that's what we are trying to avoid. And also in this context that we are dealing with, you don't want hackers to intervene. So that's part of it.
Good point.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to leave the floor for anyone here to ask a question, or if Avi, you have a question for us. If not, we're going to let you go for the rest of the afternoon because we know you're a busy man. Gentlemen, anything else?
I just thank you very much for your time, your words, you're fighting the good fight, and for being here with us.
Well,
thank you, Avi.
All I can say is that we will do our best to justify your trust of everyone here and everyone else elsewhere. And we're really serious and honest about it. So what you see is what you will get.
Well, I
you, Avi.
appreciate it. And please, if we can at some point, I would love to get you here for 2 hours, a full 2-hour show, so we could open the audience up to questions for you. I think they'd get a real kick out of that, and it'd be a lot of fun. But I know you've got a busy schedule, so we're not going to ask you right here on the spot. But I truly appreciate everything you're doing. I love your gumption. I think like Peter said, you're fighting the good fight, and you're bringing a lot of level-headed discussion to this. And I think it's because of things like the Galileo Project, because of Christopher Mellon, because of Lou Elizondo, because of the people in this community interacting with their local state representatives, that we're actually having a moment here. We're seeing this discussion change in real time. And I'm excited for the future. And by looking at your face, I could also tell you are as well.
Well, just keep in mind, it's not about the discussion. It's about what we will find. So, the fishermen can talk for as long as they want, but if they don't get any fish in their fishing net, that's not worth much. So just wait until we bring you some fish.
I
Can't wait.
When you do, we'll get on this patio of yours and I'll grill them up, buddy. Sir Avi Loeb, thank you so much. We'll see you soon, my friend, and Godspeed.
Thank you, Avi.
Thanks, Avi.
Bye-bye.
All right, you guys. So that was our discussion with Avi Loeb. I can't wait to talk to him again. I thought that was one of the most fascinating conversations we've had. It's cool to see how much fire he has for the topic, and he's willing to intellectually go toe-to-toe with anyone who is questioning the pursuit of this information, the pursuit of the science of the topic. So we're lucky to have him on our side. That's all I'm going to say. You guys, thank you so much for tuning in for these final 10 episodes of the year. We kind of packed in a couple bonus episodes, doing one every single day. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys liked the list, and it was fun for you guys as much as it was for me. Holy cow, I got a $50 super chat donation, super sticker from McEwen. Thank you so much for the donation, you guys. You guys are the producers of this show. Essentially, we are produced. We exist because of viewers like you. I mean, we're a public access channel. To do this show 4 days a week, which is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, takes a lot of work. And so donations like this, joining our Patreon for as little as $1 a month, are wonderful, wonderful ways to guarantee that we'll be here at least 4 days a week, and technically 5 with the Singularity Lab. I go on Fridays with Mike, so we switch shows on Thursdays, and we always have a really cool conversation over there. So technically 5 days a week, we give you guys a show, and we love doing it, and it's because of stuff like this. So truly appreciate it. McEwen, totally appreciate it. Seriously. Eventide, thank you for the donation earlier. The Sparky lady also had a donation, you guys. My sister had a $20 donation. Thank you, sis. Toby AM with a $5 donation. Thank you guys so much. And then the Paisley Wave with all of the donations today. I can't appreciate you guys enough. And everybody who can't donate money, don't sweat it. There are other ways to support this show, and that's just liking, sharing, subscribing, telling people about the show, ringing the bell. These are the best ways for you guys to support the show. The more we grow, the more fans we find, the easier the show's funded. The more we can do this stuff, the better cameras we can get, better computers, the more shows, more hosts. It was some big plans for the show. We've got a lot of fun things that we'd love to do. Including, I've already told you, we've got a lot of fun plans, but I don't like to overpromise and underdeliver. I'd rather underpromise and overdeliver. So I hope you guys have a great, wonderful, safe new year. Before we get out of here, of course, Want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all of the tunes that you hear on the show right here. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below, so go check them out. Want to say thank you to my family, everybody who helped in their own way help me produce the show, either by putting up with me or helping me, get a new camera or a light or a microphone. I can't appreciate you guys enough. It's, I would not have been able to do this without family and friends. When I started this show almost 2 years ago, such a weird jump to take. It was a real deep dive into a very deep end of the pool. But it's been worth it. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed myself. So just want to thank all of the viewers, all my family, all my friends, everybody who's been close to this process and vicariously living through this process as a viewer or whatever. I mean, it's just been an insane year of growth for the show, for me personally, and it's been fun sharing that with all you guys. So of course, I want to thank you guys there. I want to say thank you to the moderators that have been here all year. Truly appreciate Aaron Desario, who's also a producer on Tuesdays for Known Quantities. Thank you, Aaron. Want to say thank you to my team. Michael Mataluni, Rather Be Squidding, Jane Kyle, Alex Garcia. Could not have had the year that we had without all of you guys' help, and everyone who's contributed. Ben Jenkins, who helped make our Big Phone Home website over there at the UFO Garage podcast. Go check those guys out. They've supported so many different ways behind the scenes, and a lot of other people. So Dan Zetterstrom, Andy McGrillen, Jeremy Corbell, the gentleman we had on the show tonight, Peter Robbins, just some really wonderful, Martin Willis from Podcast UFO, my mentor. He helped us get on the KGRA show. He got us that time slot. He suggested this show for that time slot. So, so many things that people did that never asked for. Nobody ever prodded them to do it. They just did it because they love the show. And so I cannot say thank you enough. It has been an absolute wonderful year. With that, also want to remind you this show and yesterday's show will be available on podcasts shortly after this show airs. Spotify, iTunes. Leave us a rate and review. It goes a very long way to making sure the podcast grows, which it has been. Again, most downloads ever in a month. We're up to almost 13,000 this month, which destroys last month's record by a lot. I think we had 10,000 last month. So, the podcast is growing at an insane clip. What else? What else am I forgetting? I think that's everything, you guys. I appreciate all of you. I'm looking forward to 2022. And thanks for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on all of these episodes of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP, UFO. Until next year, you guys, stay safe out there. Love you very much. Peace. I'm going to tell you all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. Look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.
I believe you're enjoying all this.
Indeed, Captain. I've never seen him look so happy.
Shut up!
Shh. Shh. Well, what do you know? I finally got the last word.
Marooned for all eternity in the center of a dead planet. Buried alive. Buried alive.
So you want to go to a real party?
Yo! Stop your grinning and drop your linen. Found him.
What do you think?
Very nice.
It's very cool, Bateman, but that's nothing. What do you think?
You ain't seen nothing yet. White. Impressive. Very nice.
I believe you're enjoying all this.
Indeed, Captain. I've never seen him look so happy.
Shut up!
Well, what do you know? I finally got the last word.